Okay, so we have President Trump. He's speaking about the incident that happened yesterday with the plane, the DC plane going into the helicopter. This is straight from the White House. It's your boy kicking in with Timmy B. We got President Donald Trump giving us some intel on what's going on, giving us an update. This is a lengthy brief. Let's go check it out.
Thank you very much. I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for our nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal, and I have to say the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast. It was mobilized immediately. The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly. And we are a country of, really, we are in mourning. This has really shaken a lot of people, including people, very sadly, from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent, some very talented people, unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy, icy Potomac, it was a cold, cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us.
Yeah, I'm hearing it's like freezing temperatures like out there, and then the water and everything too. I would assume that they have to send divers down there to be able to go check to see if there's any bodies there, and then to be able to get the black box. It looked like they had some kind of crane or some flotation devices to lift the plane up. I don't know what's up with the Black Hawk. I mean, I'm sure that they're already gathering that as well, but it's so sad, folks. Let's get back to it.
Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God. We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. Because over the years I've watched as things like this happen, and they say, well, we're always investigating, and then the investigation 3 years later, they announce it. We think we have some pretty good ideas. But we'll find out how this disaster occurred, and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation. Our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, his second day on the job when that happened. It's
and then Pete Hegseth gets confirmed as the Secretary of Defense. So this is all very interesting to be getting confirmed, getting confirmed. And then you jump into the office, and then next thing you know, a plane carrying 60 people goes into a military helicopter conducting a routine training evaluation flight on the second week that President Donald Trump gets into office for the second time. I don't know. That's a lot of coincidences. I'm hearing DEI. I'm hearing this, a bunch of things, but let's hope it's not DEI. Let's hope these people were properly the people that need to be behind the wheels operating these heavy machinery.
It's a rough one. We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people, and they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. We will state certain opinions, however. I'm also immediately appointing an acting commissioner to the FAA, Christopher Rocheleau, a 22-year veteran of the agency, highly respected. Christopher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect,
so
talent.
simple.
The word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses.
We don't want stupid people operating these vehicles that is transporting other people. Dangerous material, people. We don't need anybody stupid transporting these. I'm just incompetent, like not equipped for the job, not qualified. We need people that are qualified to be operating these heavy machineries, operating these vehicles. Oh my God, we need merit. It don't matter what you look like. If you can't operate this vehicle, if I can't give you the specs and read off a bunch of info that somebody who operates planes should know, you're out of here. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you look like. You can look like the rainbow. You can have no color to your skin. You could be this gender. You could have this orientation, whatever it is. If you can't answer these questions, if you can't get in a flight sim, if you can't perform when operating the actual vehicle and getting these folks back safely, conducting all the safety procedures and stuff that needs to be done, bruh, you're out. That's just me. Let's get back to it.
You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, actually their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened, because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit.
Shots fired at Pete Buttigieg. Who would have thought? Who would have thought, man? He catching these strays out here. Let's go.
The Department of Transportation is government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. but they actually came out with a directive to white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray, and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it. So we all saw the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as everybody else. They came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more.
This is the person operating the plane, not the helicopter. This is the person operating the plane. So what are we about to hear? Something about the pilot here being on this? I hope not.
He's coming in the path. And for some reason, he had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, "Do you see?" He was talking about, "Do you see him?" But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also he said, "Follow him in," and then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place. Well, you follow him in, that means like everything's fine. Follow him in. You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter. I mean, because it was visual.
What did I say, dude? What did I say? It sounded like he's gonna be referencing something about this military helicopter. This military helicopter wasn't. Dude, that doesn't sound good, man. Now he's saying that it seems like the DEI is running deep. It was running deep through the military. And this could be a reason why this happened, because of the helicopter pilot not being fit to operate this vehicle. Because he said that the pilot who was operating the plane did everything, but it comes down to the pilot operating the helicopter. And there's some great men and women who operated these machines doing incredible things. There's men and women that service these vehicles as well as keeping up the maintenance and so on and so forth. A lot of analytics, there's a lot of numbers, a lot of hands-on work, detail-oriented work there. I mean, you got to be on point. You got to be on point. Checks and balances have to go when you're about to operate the vehicle and then shutting down the vehicle and stuff like that. What was this person? Who was this person flying this helicopter? That's crazy. And were they fit to be operating this helicopter? I get it. If you're training, you have to train the person. You know what I mean? To be able to operate it. But for what he's saying, that the helicopter went off or veered off as this is so good. Excuse me, is so confusing. President Trump definitely mentioned that the plane was veering off just a little bit ago. So whoever was operating this, I guess, seen the plane and got freaked out or something. Like, is that what this is coming down to? Whoever was operating the plane, whoever was operating the helicopter. Man, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out here. Let's keep going.
It was a very clear night. It was cold, but clear, and clear as you could be. The American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all of their landing lights on. I could see it from the Kennedy Center tape. We had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary. Thus far, I'm sure we'll see other tapes because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras, cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by.
Whoa.
But we had a situation where you had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down. It had the ability to turn. And the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously.
Wow.
And it did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that that would have been the difference because the timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken. And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason,
Crazy, man.
it just kept going.
That's
And
not
then
good.
made a slight turn at the very end, and by that time it was too late. They shouldn't have been at the same height.
Right.
Because if it was at the same height, you could have gone under it or over it, and nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher. It could have been 200 feet lower, but it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened, and some things happened that shouldn't have happened. So you had a helicopter going in an identical direction. You had a helicopter that was at the exact same height as somebody going in essentially the opposite direction. You had a plane that was following a track, which is a track that every other plane followed.
Right.
And I don't imagine, I know I've heard today that they might have been following the preceding plane, which was pretty close, but not that close, the preceding plane. But you wouldn't have even been able to see that because
The proceeding claims. Hold up 1 second. All right, sorry about that. What was he saying? We're talking about the pilot.
been able to see that.
You're talking about common sense. The clear visibility thing is my issue. You could clearly see that there's a plane and a helicopter, or maybe you couldn't. I mean, we're all not in the air at that time, but it's being said by President Trump and law enforcement that you could see. So visibility wise, like these folks have NVGs and stuff like that. At least the Black Hawk helicopter pilots do. Why was the plane going towards them and the helicopter pilot, instead of moving away, just goes right towards them? That's crazy. And if the plane is following in the past plane's trail, why, like, I don't know, just why would it? I don't know. There's folks flying planes in and out of that all the time. There's helicopters flying all around that. Especially, it's been amped up since President Trump has been inaugurated and has gotten in his office for a second term. So there's a lot more security. The Super Bowl's coming up. The Super Bowl's coming up. Christy Gnomes and a bunch of other people have like a lot of work on their hands to make sure that everything goes well. Because the last Super Bowl, there's people shooting outside of the Super Bowl. It's insane. Anyway, let's get back to it.
That because of the direction that the helicopter was coming in at. So you had a confluence of bad decisions that were made.
It's crazy.
And you have people that lost their lives, violently lost their lives. We're going to take a few questions. I'd like to ask our new Secretary of Transportation to say a few words. Sean Duffy, great gentleman, just started. It's
a lot of work.
not your fault, and I know you agree with me very strongly on intellect and even psychological well-being of the air traffic control. It's such an important position. And I think I can't emphasize stronger. I changed it when I first ran in 2016. I changed it. We had the highest standard that you could have. And then they changed it back. That was Biden to a standard I read it to you. That was from one of your papers. One of the people in this room actually wrote that.
Wow.
And then I changed it back a few days ago. And unfortunately,
it wasn't in time.
We'll see. We don't know that necessarily it's even the controller's fault. But one thing we do know, there was a lot of vision, and people should have been able to see that, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say, wow, that plane's getting a little bit close? So this is a tragedy that
insane, man.
Should not have happened. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just note the President's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We have had a whole of government response, local, state, federal. And when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You make our jobs a lot easier. You made an important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces. I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible with the NTSB, who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination.
In one piece.
That didn't happen yesterday.
It's crazy,
That's
man.
not acceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
Pete, would you like to say something?
Pete Hegseth.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again,
Secretary
I want
of
to
Defense.
echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened. I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We first and foremost, from the Defense Department, want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this. Never should happen. And certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers, a young captain, staff sergeant, and CW2, chief warrant officer.
Yeah, chief
on
warrant
a
officer.
routine annual retraining, night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DOD and Army level.
Wow.
Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DOD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DOD as well.
Right, yeah.
We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government.
Right.
The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you.
Very much. JD, please.
JD Vance. Yeah, everyone's have to speak on this.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means, on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin.
That's crazy.
That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else.
Right.
And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
Yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in
Right.
contact with
Nice.
Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate.
Nice. That's cool. Get those people back
Please, go
to
ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
back
President.
home to where they belong.
The situation in
very
the
sad.
Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse. Even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the
Republic of the
conflict
Congo?
between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability, the situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Ms. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the
Well, you're
Democratic
asking me a
Republic
question
of the
about
Congo.
Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't
But
think
this
it's
isn't-
appropriate right now to talk
Right.
about it. But it is a very serious problem.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and
Caitlin
air traffic
McEnany
control, and
from
seemingly
CNN.
the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right
No,
now?
I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people. You mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference?
Does it comfort their families
They
to
are
hear you
a
blaming
group of
DEI
people that have
policies?
lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
But are you
I'm
blaming-
surprised coming from you.
Are you blaming
Please.
Thank
Please.
you. Thank you
I don't
for
even
the
understand
time
what
for
she
being
even
here.
asked.
Based on your analysis so far, do you have a
Are you
sense
moving ahead of the
who was at
investigation?
fault, if it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was it was based on vision. You had a lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. You know, those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given. A few seconds later, there was a crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going.
Right.
I can't imagine people
That's crazy.
with 20/20 vision not seeing, what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideways directions. Obviously, you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower. We're higher, so if somehow there's a screw up,
it's common
it's
sense.
not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the
That's not
American
good.
Airlines Center, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was the helicopter doing in that track? It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play, and they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir.
I will admit though, if there's 3 people operating the Black Hawk, or they're in the Black Hawk, there should be 2 people piloting it. There should be the trainee and the person who is the mentor or the trainer, and then the person who observes behind them, the chief warrant officer. Right? Am I missing something here? So there should be plenty of eyes on the flight path. Someone should be able to operate, navigate. Someone should be able to fly the plane. Both of those, I think that, like the Blackhawks, they both have controls. So someone should both be on the control. To my understanding, I haven't been in the cockpit of a Blackhawk before, but to my understanding, there's 2 controls to it. I don't know.
You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger
There
jet?
were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Mr. President, spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no.
Mr. President, on your executive order.
Not about this.
On your executive order, you've already issued an executive order you say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well, we issued it 3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hire in the federal government? What's plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
That's crazy.
Mr. President, you have today...
He said they shouldn't have been flying this helicopter. They should not be doing these particular jobs. Bars.
Blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that...
Just imagine the president's like, you shouldn't be doing this job. You got this job to fly this helicopter, this plane, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then the president comes in, goes, you got that job because of X, Y, and Z. You didn't get it for your merit. You're not qualified to do this job. I mean, like that has to do something. That has to psychologically, like, make a person go, you know what? Bang! Like, maybe I'm not qualified to do this. Maybe I need to do something that I'm qualified for. I get it. People are very ambitious. I'm going off of me personally. I'm a very ambitious person, so I understand people become very ambitious. They want to go for some things that they may not be able to do, and you'll never know until you go out and go do it. That's one of the big things too. Don't ever let anybody try to talk you out of anything unless you're trying to hurt yourself or somebody else. That's a whole completely different. But the whole point of this is some people become so ambitious, they go for things that are way out of their freaking grasp. Way out of their grasp. And stuff like that, when you're going out of your way, or you're going for something that's way out of your grasp, that involves with transporting people are dangerous ordinance or objects, and there's just certain jobs you can't do, man. Like, it's crazy out here. It's crazy. They got people doing jobs that aren't qualified to be doing these jobs. That's what it seemed like. I mean, that's just reality, but that seems like what the administration under the Biden administration was all about. It doesn't matter if you aren't qualified for the job. We want you for the job because you fit this quota, this color, this whatever about your gender, sex, whatever, instead of your merit, dude. Like, there's people out there based on DEI and not merit that are doing these jobs. Like, that's scary to me. That's scary to me. There's police officers, freaking first responders, military, doctors, lawyers, just anything in between all that. There'd be people not qualified to do the job. They only got the job because of the color of their skin or whatever that they go by, but not their merit. That scares me. And especially when I want to go and get on an airplane, because I won't say frequently, like every year or so, I've taken a trip on a plane to go somewhere far away. I have made it back every single time. A lot of those planes are a little bumpy sometimes because of the turbulence, but I have never gone like, oh man, this person shouldn't be flying this plane, or they look this certain way, they probably shouldn't be flying this plane. I never had any of that until all this stuff comes up, and there's doors on planes flying off, and it just like things are falling apart. Their services not being provided or being fulfilled to this full extent because people aren't qualified to do some of these jobs. It's just insane, man. And you got people flying planes and helicopters, bruh.
You weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps.
And then the aircraft and the air traffic controller stuff is very interesting. I did hear that has like a really high turnout or turnover rate, and they pay a lot because it's very, very how should I say, nerve-wracking to be in that air traffic control room looking over everything, and all these planes or helicopters and aircraft are landing. It's a lot to deal with.
Perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
It's all under investigation.
That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. ice skating community was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA text that you read is real. But the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's
Who said
website.
that, you?
No, it's on the website.
said-
the
who
FAA's
said that,
website.
you?
It was there in
Oh,
2013. It was there for the
Take a look.
entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration
Nice and
too.
easy.
So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first
I
administration?
did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in, and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence.
It
Okay.
was on the website.
It's on the website.
Quiet.
Welcome back to the. I'm sorry. You mentioned that a vision was probably the problem that was at issue in this crash.
Be quiet.
There's been some reports
Sit
that
down.
one of the pilots in the helicopter may have been using night vision equipment. Was there any
I heard
indication?
that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your view plane if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened.
Yeah, because if you have NVGs on, it brings in your depth of field. It messes with all of that, and then you have this light sitting in front of your eyes for so long. It's and you take the NVGs off. You have to wait for your eyes to reset to get used to the normal dark light or natural. Or I wouldn't say natural because there's really no natural light at night unless it's from the stars. All this other stuff is man-made lights. This isn't natural light. So there's a lot that goes into that too as well.
That would
of wearing NVGs while you're flying.
be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it.
Right.
Have a couple of more.
Mr. President, is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly?
Go to what?
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly as well?
Well, sure. We want fast confirmations. And the Democrats, as you know, are doing everything they can to delay them. They've taken too long. We're struggling to get very good people that everybody knows are going to be confirmed, but we're struggling to get them out faster. We want them out faster. It's a good question, actually. We've been pushing Sean. Everyone knows Sean for a long time. He got many, many Democrat votes, but they want to take as long as they can. They ask questions like some of the questions that Peter would ask that were totally irrelevant and not very good questions, but they want to just keep it going. They want to keep it going as long as possible. I was very honored, actually, that you got so many Democrat votes. That was really good. That was really good.
When I try to meet with the families, and second question, is it your impression that military training that was done during that time?
The what?
The training that the helicopter was involved in. Is it anything you can tell us about
You
that?
don't know. These are the things that will come up with the investigation. You don't know. But the helicopter obviously was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a tragedy occurred. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I've got a question about the.
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've been critical of the current regulations, and you've called for big reforms at FAA. I'm curious, sir.
I made the reforms, actually.
What is your message?
3 days ago, I made them.
Yes, sir. What is your message then to the American public in the weeks and months ahead? Should they feel hesitant to fly? And if you could clarify perhaps something that the Defense Secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were, and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to. But it was basically practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly. Okay.
On his question, the first question, should people be hesitant to fly right now?
No, not at all. I've not hesitated to fly. This is something that it's been many years that something like this has happened, and the collision is just something that we don't expect ever to happen again. We are going to have the highest level people. We've already hired some of the people that you've already hired for that position long before we knew about this. I mean, long before. From the time I came in, we started going out and getting the best people because I said it's not it's not appropriate what they're doing. I think it's a tremendous mistake. They like to do things and they like to take them too far, and this is sometimes what ends up happening. Now, with that, I'm not blaming the controller. I'm saying there are things that you could question, like the height of the helicopter, the height of the plane being at the same level and going in opposite directions. It's not a positive. But no, we're already hiring people. No, flying is very safe. We have the safest flying anywhere in the world, and we'll keep it that way. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
Shout out to President Donald Trump for giving us that briefing. So apparently he's stating that it might be a DEI thing, it might be a hiring thing when it comes to the process, like the hiring process for folks who are in air traffic control, airplane pilots, and helicopter or military helicopter pilots. So that goes into DEI, into the military, into commercial airlines, and yeah, I mean, like that's very interesting. So one of these people were just not fit to be operating one of these vehicles. That's what it seems like to me off of the information. We need more proof, and I'm sure there'll have to be some kind of indefinite proof that will kind of tell us what's going on here, or show us that there was some malfeasance in the hiring process. I mean, all I have to say is, once again, just reiterating what JD Vance, the Secretary of Transportation, and the SecDef said. You want to make sure that you got the right people to be working these jobs. I mean, that's just as simple as that. The right people, whether anybody complains about it or not, right is right. If these people know how to do their job well, correctly, to the point, they show up early, they do the best that they can for the job, they need to be on that. They need to be in that job. You don't take away jobs from people who know how to do the job, but they don't fit the criteria because they're not the color of the skin, or they don't go by the gender, or they don't believe in the politics that you want them. That's just insane, bruh. We need common sense back in this place. We need common sense hiring and common sense leadership. Hiring and leadership. You know what I mean? Common sense execution of the mission. We need common sense leadership to be able to oversee and put people to where they need to go so they can execute those missions. And we need the people that are executing those missions to be competent people, not incompetent people. We need competent people. That's kind of my thoughts on that. It's such a tragedy. My prayers go out to the family members who lost lives in this terrible, terrible accident. This was a DC plane crash into a military Black Hawk. This was January 29th, 2025. Today is January 30th, 2025. I did a video yesterday covering it. Please go check that out. As well as, if you want to help support your boy, hit me up on all platforms at Kicking It with Timmy B, and we're streaming on X at KIW